What is up guys, Andy Forestine Runner here, and today we're going to be comparing the Hoka One Carbon X to the Nike Zoom Fly 3. So ever since the release of the Hoka One Carbon X, there have been comparisons made between these two shoes for two main reasons, I believe. Number one is the fact that they are both very similar in terms of their purpose as running shoes, but secondly, how this shoe manages to get the weight distribution so much better than this shoe, considering they both weigh extremely similar amounts. So today, now I finally have myself a pair of the Hoka One Carbon X and have run in both these shoes, I want to give you my thoughts on comparing these two, and in particular, the Zoom Fly now being at £99, would you pay the extra £60 to get this shoe over this shoe? Today we'll go through the pros and cons on each of the shoes, and I will give you my final thoughts at the end. So if you're excited for today's video guys, make sure you hit that like button, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, let's dive in. Very quickly before we dive into my overall thoughts on the shoes, let's go through a very quick technical but not so technical overview of both of them. We'll start off by saying that the Hoka One Carbon X has a 5mm heel to toe drop, whereas the Nike Zoom Fly 3 has an 8mm heel to toe drop. And what we'll do is we'll work ourselves from the heel counter area down through the midfoot to the toe box, midsole and outsole. I'll also start off by saying that both these shoes in my size, UK size 13 and 13.5, both weigh over 10 ounces. Both over 300, just over 300 grams. So this is what I mean in terms of the pros and cons, which we'll get to, why this shoe distributes the weight so much better than this shoe. But technically, let's go through, starting with the Hoka One Carbon X. We have a lovely plush heel counter area around the top here, but then it gets thinner at the base of the heel counter area. However, we do have this embroidered section, which makes the heel counter area nice and sturdy and secure. So we've got the plushness at the top, which sits nicely around the ankle bone, but then thinner, losing some weight at the base here. Whereas in the Nike Zoom Fly 3, kind of similar attempt, but again, thinner and less material. We have a lot thinner the heel counter area with just some buffered sections below where the ankle bone was sit, and the heel flare that we saw in quite a few shoes throughout 2019. I'm sure we'll see that trend carry on into 2020. I do find myself with a bit of heel slippage in this shoe, and I have found it when I've got thinner heel counter areas that tends to happen. But don't get that in the Hoka One Carbon X. So we'll move on to the tongues and the lacing. The Hoka One Carbon X has a gusseted tongue, which means there's a bit of elastic that connects to the side of the tongue, connects to here and here, just helping that midfoot to lock down a little bit better. It makes it feel a little bit more secure, but it is a separate tongue. And again, it's that combination of, it's not a paper thin tongue, but it's not a plush, what I would call Asics padded tongue. It just sits nicely in the middle with a traditional lockdown lacing system, nothing fancy, no separate eyelet chains or anything like that. It's just nice, what I would call just some kind of melted plastic around the eyelet holes, just so stability for the laces so it doesn't rip or pull or not tighten. It's just nice, it just works well. In the Zoom Fly 3 we have a different style. It's not a separate tongue, it's a booty fit type of shoe, like the Adidas Ultra Boost 19. Slide your foot in there. This is like a wetsuit material, I've said it in previous videos. It's like a wetsuit type material, very stretchy but nice. Works well, have no objections, have no preference if I'm honest with you between the two. Both systems work well. And again, on the Zoom Fly 3, the best upgrade they made from the original Zoom Fly was the fact that they lost the fly wire holding the laces in. I could never, if there was one downside about the original Zoom Fly, it was I couldn't quite get the lockdown right because the fly wire just kept getting a little bit loose, which is a bit frustrating. So this is a much better lacing system down the middle. Now if we move on to the materials being used on the upper, we have a single mesh upper, keeping down weight, so it's nice and lightweight, and similarly in the Nike Zoom Fly 3 we have vapor weave. And this along with in the next percent was the first shoes they used a vapor weave in. I find it a good material. Lots of people find that it bunches up in the toe box quite a bit. Yeah, there's a bit of excess material there, but on the whole I don't find I get this crinkled effect like a lot of people do in the Vaporfly, but then I think it's a slightly different vapor we've used in the Zoomfly 3 as the Vaporfly Next Percent, because that again is lighter weight, and I think material is a bit lighter. It's a bit like crinkly paper. This isn't quite the same. So again, a decent upper. Moving on to the midsoles of both these shoes. Both these shoes have carbon plates in them. We have the ProFly midsole in the Hoka One Carbon X, followed by a carbon plate and then a foam rubber outsole. There's no extra rubber on, sorry, not a foam rubber outsole, just a foam outsole. There's no extra rubber on the base here, so again that's going to lead to maybe some more quicker wearing, whereas on the Zoomfly 3 we have a full length React midsole through here with a carbon plate inside it, and then some rubber outsole for durability, which to be fair is holding up really well. So those are the two technicalities on the shoes. Let's dive in to my preferences, the pros and cons, and whether this thing is worth buying over this thing. Now it's £60 cheaper. Okay, so finally let's dive into the pros and the cons of these two shoes and which one I would pick, considering now this thing is over £60 cheaper than the Hoka One Carbon X. So let's start with the Carbon X. I can't list the pros. I absolutely love this shoe. There's so many, and it's just such a great shoe. I'm just going to say the one con, and that is simply it's just a little bit too weighty. If both of these shoes, if racing shoes had boxing weight divisions, they would both be in the heavyweight category. As I said earlier, both of these in my size, UK size 13 and 13.5, are over 10 ounces, over 300 grams, which is on the heavier side, but you just do not notice it in this shoe. The weight distribution, I know this isn't an official test, but I'll show you the Zoomfly 3 in a minute. It's just perfect. I just like to hang it by its laces. You can see it stays relatively level in comparison, which will come onto the Zoomfly 3. If I hold this here and hold it by the laces, you can see just how heavy that forefoot is. It keeps twisting around, but look how low that is. It's absolutely insane. So in terms of the pros and cons, I love this shoe. You've seen me race in it, you've seen me test it. I have only got positive things to say about the shoe, bar the fact that I was really hoping in version 2 they'll shed some weight. We'll see what happens there. In terms of the Zoomfly 3, it's a good shoe, but I have two cons with it, as you've just seen, the major one being the weight distribution. The other one being a heel slippage. As I said in the beginning, I just find with these smaller, thinner heel counters, my heel slips a bit, but it's not caused any Achilles blistering or any issues like that. So it is predominantly the weight issue. Now I have raced in this shoe. I've done a lot of miles in this shoe, well over 150 miles now, I believe. It's holding up really well. The React foam in the midsole is fantastic. And now for under £100, it's certainly a shoe that I would consider urging you guys to try. I would say it seems to certainly be people in the bigger foot size that suffer with the weight distribution of this shoe more. A lot of you with smaller feet don't seem to notice the issue so much. I know Seth, who a lot of you guys watched, got on with his Zoomfly 3 really well. He's got quite small feet. And I know a lot of you in the comments say exactly the same. If it's a smaller shoe size, it seems to be right. But it's us bigger people with bigger feet that seem to suffer with this shoe. So let's get two things straight. And this is my opinion and my opinion only. As a training trainer, which one would I choose in terms of value for money? Well, I would say that the Zoomfly 3 is decent, and if you're using it for fast, speedy work, then it's worth the money. It's worth the money now that it's under £100. I certainly would not pay full price for this shoe, just like the Peg Turbo 2. I'm just not interested in paying Nike prices at full price. It's not good. But from a training perspective, this thing will do you really well. Its comfort levels are amazing, and it is good if you can put up with the weird sensation. But the biggest question is racing. Is this thing worth choosing over this thing if you were going for racing? Saving £60 and race performance and feel? In my honest and humble opinion, it is not. In the bigger shoe size. Now, again, this is my opinion, but I've got to say I would certainly rather pay a £60 extra to get a premium product for the premium feel that this thing delivers. I raced in this shoe, it delivered well, but in a racing environment when I'm running, I don't want to be thinking about my foot strike. I don't want to be thinking about how much is my form and efficiency when this thing feels like it's trying to pull my feet to the floor because it's so heavy. As I said, this thing is buttery smooth. You don't notice it. My form and efficiency was great in this shoe. My turnover was way better on my recent half marathon than it has been in a long time. And so in that answer, no, I would choose the Hoka One Carbon X over this thing any day. Does that make sense? I hope it does. From a training perspective, it's worth a punt. From a racing perspective, this thing all the way. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Have you raced in these two shoes? What do you think about these two and which one do you prefer? Let me know. It'd be great to engage with you down in the comments section below. And as always guys, if you liked today's video, make sure you give it a like, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel for weekly running content, and as always, I will see you on the next one. Until then.